Hi, Sunday, October 27th, and we're tracking Hurricane Melissa, now just south of Jamaica today. The system has been remarkable to watch over the past couple of days. Since I made my last video, the system has been rapidly intensifying, and is now a powerful Category 5 hurricane with maximum sustained winds estimated to be around 175 to 180 miles per hour. And that threshold is a threshold that not many hurricanes ever get to. It's in a ballpark of some of the strongest hurricanes we've ever seen in the historical records in the Atlantic, on par with hurricanes like Maria and Irma in 2017, Dorian in 2019, and even Milton of last year in the Gulf of Mexico. And as remarkable as these systems intensification has been, the system may still be intensifying, and we can infer this if we look at some of the recon data that we had earlier this afternoon. Throughout their mission, they found that the winds were increasing up to, again, 175 and 180 miles per hour, but also the pressure was still decreasing as it began to move towards the west-northwest. And the final pressure value before the plane left the storm was about 906 millibars, and the drop rate was around 1 millibar per hour from the dropsons there. And so if you extrapolate that since this mission, we're down to potentially down to around 901, 902 millibars, and that's very close to some of the deepest pressures that we've ever recorded, not just in the Atlantic, but also globally. Not many tropical cyclones globally ever achieve a pressure that low. And that indicates that the winds also may increase as well, which means that this system could make a run at one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes that we've ever seen. In the official records, some of the strongest ones we've seen are Hurricane Wilma of 2005, Hurricane Gilbert of 1988, and Hurricane Allen of 1980. Those storms had winds of about 185 to 190 miles per hour. And this storm may be getting very close to that by now, or maybe achieve 190 miles per hour. But we'll have to see, and that's, a little fickle because wind speeds can oscillate quite a bit in high-end hurricanes like this, and that will be primarily for record keeping. However, the most important thing here is that this system is now making its northward turn, as you can see in this recon data with the center fixes. And unfortunately, this intensification means that the system will likely be of Category 5 strength when it comes up to landfall in Jamaica sometime tomorrow morning. And unfortunately, there's no getting way around this. This is likely going to be a catastrophic event for Jamaica. It was already likely going to be that with the very heavy rainfall that we were going to see across Jamaica of, upwards of a meter of rainfall in some spots. But now we're adding on the impacts of the eye wall of a Category 5 hurricane, which is catastrophic in nature. You can see this happen if we look at the HAFS model. This is a high-resolution hurricane model. And this gives us an idea of what the system may do over the next, say, 12 hours before it comes into landfall in Jamaica. Now, so far, we have not seen a successful eyewall replacement cycle take place today. You kind of expect one to occur, as it typically does at these high intensities. However, if we looked at, and I didn't pull it up, but we had radar out of Jamaica this afternoon, and it just seems like any secondary band that tries to form into a secondary eye wall just fails. And there may be a couple reasons why that's happening. One is that we do still have some of that northerly mid-level shear that I talked about a few days ago. That could be now working in favor of the storm, keeping that band from wrapping around fully around the inner eye wall. And the other may just be that the inner eye wall is simply too strong right now for a secondary band to really compete with it. And so for now, the system is likely to maintain this high-end intensity for the next 12 hours at least, up to landfall. You can see on the HAFS model, it does that, maintaining Category 5 intensity up to landfall sometime late tomorrow morning or early on Tuesday afternoon. This timing has been pushed back a little bit over the past couple of days, as the system has been tracking a little bit further southwest than models had expected. And so that has increased the time between when the system makes a turn and makes landfall in Jamaica. This also has increased the probability of landfall across the western half of the island. You'll note that compared to a few days ago, we're now making landfall in southwestern Jamaica compared to the central coast. And details like that will be very important for determining who gets the max winds of the eye wall, but also who gets the maximum storm surge, which could exceed 3 or 4 meters in some spots along the southern coast. And the maximum storm surge will take place along and just east of when the center makes landfall. And so for areas like Kingston along the East Coast, this is a good short-term trend because that may mean that you avoid the worst storm surge. Though unfortunately, the side effect of that is now the western side of the coast may as well see that high storm surge take place. Now, as it makes landfall in Jamaica, the system will likely weaken substantially as it interacts with the high terrain across the island, and we'll likely see the system come off as a weakened Category 3 or Category 4 back into the Caribbean seas as it heads towards eastern Cuba. Now, models have tried to show a little bit of a rebound in intensity before it makes landfall in eastern Cuba. I personally have my doubts on this, as the system will be gaining size as it interacts with these land masses, and it will only have about 12 hours or less before it makes landfall in Cuba. So it's probably not enough time for it to appreciably recover its structure and re-intensify much. However, the weakening rate will likely decrease in magnitude, so we'll likely still see the system come in at major hurricane intensity, maybe still near Category 4 intensity by landfall in Cuba. And that's the current expectation from the Hurricane Center in their latest official forecast. Now, going further north, once it makes landfall in Cuba, a similar thing to Jamaica, the system will weaken considerably, likely below major hurricane intensity as it interacts with the high terrain here. Though one thing that I must stress here in the southeast Bahamas is that even though the system is weakening, notice that the wind field is gaining significant size as it impacts Jamaica and Cuba. So we're likely going to be dealing with a large Cat 1 or Cat 2 hurricane that comes through here. And the factor of large Cat 1 or Cat 2s is they can have storm surge Category 2 higher than you would normally expect. So we may still see very significant storm surge across these islands, which are more susceptible to the storm surge and hurricane force winds that these storms offer because there's not nearly as much land. There's not as much friction to slow down the winds across these islands. And for that reason, today, we sent a lot of hurricane warnings issued for the southeast Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. Now, as we go further northeast, the system will begin to accelerate in time as it gets picked up by an upper trough over the southeast U.S. That is some good news for the Bahamas. You'll see that by Thursday morning, the system's core is now clearing out from those islands. And it's possible in this time frame the system does try to rebound in intensity slightly. As if you look at the upper level pattern, again, here's that upper trough that's starting to pick up the system and push it off towards the northeast, but it's also enhancing a part of the subtropical jet across the western Atlantic. And it's possible that the system does tap into this stronger flow, and it helps to negate some of the negative impacts of the increasing southwesterly vertical shear. And you'll see in the model that the pressure does lower a little bit as it intensifies some, maybe back to a Category 2 on this model. Now, I don't think this is going to be a very significant phase because the system is moving over progressively cooler waters, and the wind field is also of significant size by this point. In fact, I'll show you as well the sea surface temperatures as we are now in late October. So for Bermuda, this is a benefit. You can see by the time the hurricane gets there, the sea surface temperatures are not favorable for a hurricane. So regardless of whatever intensification happens after the Bahamas, the system will be in a weakening state as it comes northeast close to the island. However, it will be accelerating because of all the stronger flow in the subtropical jet, so it will likely make it there still as a hurricane. Maybe it's a Category 1, seems to be most likely right now from what models are expecting there. But another good side of the fast forward motion is that it will be a very quick type of event. We'll see conditions rapidly deteriorate Thursday night across Bermuda, but then by Friday afternoon, they rapidly get better. And by Halloween evening, it may still be a nice night if you're going trick-or-treating, although I don't know if they'll have them scheduled just in case the hurricane does still bring some impacts on Halloween night. But again, the impact shouldn't be all too long, and by Friday into Saturday, the hurricane will be moving well off northeast of Bermuda into much colder waters as a post-tropical cyclone. There does seem to be, I'll mention this real quick, some chance that the system does get close to Atlantic Canada. Some models have tried to show a scenario where it deviates a little bit further west of Bermuda, and as it recurves into the far North Atlantic, that gets a little bit closer to Newfoundland, and that could increase the wind impacts there, but that will be as a more non-tropical system and not as a hurricane by that point. As you can see, the waters up here are very cold now for us being in late October. And so putting all of this together, this is the current 3-day forecast from the Hurricane Center. We'll show the 5-day in just a moment. You can see again that maintaining a major hurricane as it moves over Jamaica and into eastern Cuba, with hurricane warnings in place for both of those spots, and then thereafter moving across the southeastern Bahamas and Turks and Caicos with hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings as well in effect. Now, something as well I want to mention is that we do have a tropical storm warning across the entire coast of Haiti. As you can see, the eastern side of this is a little bit more fat than the western side. We talked about that being possible because the shear vector, as it makes this turn, turns more out of the west. So we'll likely see tropical storm force winds and heavy rainfall extending east into Haiti, which unfortunately may add on to the totals that we've already seen in Haiti, which has been catastrophic in nature, especially on the southern peninsula. Now, going beyond the three-day forecast, you can see that acceleration taking place in quick fashion by Thursday afternoon, approaching Bermuda, and again, conditions rapidly deteriorate by Thursday night, but by Friday afternoon, they rapidly get better as it turns post-tropical and heads into the far North Atlantic. Now, looking at the rainfall potential, again, catastrophic totals are expected here across Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Cuba. You can see across Jamaica and Cuba especially, that's where the highest totals will be found, where totals could be in the 400 to 750 millimeter range on top of what we've already gotten, especially here in Jamaica. And that will likely lead to catastrophic flash flooding and landslides across both areas. And you can see the additional rainfall that we could see as well in Hispaniola, especially along the south coast, a broad range of 100 to 300 millimeters of rainfall, adding on to the feet of rainfall that we've likely already gotten in southern Haiti. And across the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas, we could see some additional rainfall as well as the system comes through. We could have a broad swath of 100 to 300 millimeters of rainfall, especially focused near where the core goes, as that will have the heaviest rainfall rates, and that could lead to some flooding alongside the storm surge flooding that we could see across those islands. And the final graphic I'll show is the arrival time of tropical storm force winds. For Jamaica, it's too late. The system is now impacting the island, so preparation should have been done by now, and the best thing to do is hunker down. For Cuba, you have the rest of the night tonight to make your preparations and complete them, as tropical storm force winds could arrive at their earliest by tomorrow morning or early tomorrow afternoon. And for the Turks and Caicos and Bahamas, the earliest arrival time is tomorrow evening. So you have the rest of the day today and most of the day tomorrow to finish your preparations ahead of the storm. And finally, for Bermuda, we're looking at Thursday morning being the earliest arrival time of tropical storm force winds. It will likely be a very quick deterioration, so you may have time on Thursday still to prepare before the tropical storm force winds really approach the island, but make sure those are done by Thursday before the system arrives. That's all that I've got for today. Stay safe in Jamaica and Cuba as the storm comes through over the next few days, and I'll have more videos on this over the coming days as the system rakes all of these islands. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.